Welcome to Locales Unknown. This podcast gives you the tools you need to choose your next travel destination and the tips you want to be able to explore like a local. Here are your hosts, Chris and Winfield.
Today we are here with Carolina, and we are going to be focusing on Colombia, specifically the Caribbean coast. And welcome to the show, Carolina. How are you?
I'm great. Thank you for having me.
No, definitely. Thank you for coming on. And so just give us a little bit of background starting off and tell us a bit. Colombia is obviously a vast nation, a lot of different landscapes, two coasts, Pacific, Caribbean, a lot of mountains. Give us an overview of the country, please, and how some of the regions differ in terms of culture and also in terms of different activities.
Okay, so Colombia, like you said, is a very diverse country. I think it mostly has to do with the fact that we're like smack down the middle. There's the mountains, so everything's a little disconnected in that way because it's so hard to get from one region to the other, which has made it so that every region is so distinct from the other one. So you have the coast where people we're right by the Caribbean. People are very warm. There's a lot of festivals, that sort of thing, as opposed to like the center of the country, which is the capital in Bogota. It's very cold. The culture is very, very different. You have the Pacific region, which has a lot of African American background. They have beautiful, beautiful carnivals as well. So many traditions that they brought from there and still to this day keep going. And then you have like the Región Cafetera, where, you know, the primary source of income is people with their farms and the coffee that they produce. And then you also have the jungle, the Orinoquia, which is pretty much impenetrable. And their culture is very similar to that of the countries that also share the Amazon. So they're very similar to Brazil, that sort of thing. So I guess that's a good overview that I can give you.
No, that's terrific. Thank you. And I think that you hit on some really, really key points there. Unfortunately, Colombia has been in the news historically for a lot of the wrong reasons. And I would say that the country has definitely experienced a turning point within the past 20 years, maybe even sooner than that. Can you give us some insight about that? Because I know that a lot of people always ask me when I've only been to Bogota and Cartagena on two separate occasions. The first thing they ask me is, Colombia safe now to visit? And I say, yes, but it depends. So maybe that's not the right answer, but I'd be interested in what you think about that.
I mean, I think pretty much any country is safe to travel depending on how you want to do it. I don't think that there's any destination that you can go to and then absolutely nothing is going to happen to you. I've been to quite a few places. I've been Southeast Asia. I've been in most of Latin America. I've been to the US. I've been to Europe. And I can't name a single place where I've been like, oh, yeah, you can do absolutely anything, stay out all night, and nothing's going to happen to you. There's risk everywhere. With Colombia, though, as you said, like it's been in the news. It's pretty obvious what was happening in the country, and we do have a very tragic history. However, things have turned around, and if you plan a trip responsibly, as you should when you go anywhere, you're going to have a great time, and it's going to be very safe. I think that the number one thing that people should do when they consider traveling to Colombia is maybe talking to someone who's from there, not just in terms like for the sake of their safety, but also for the sake of them knowing what it is they have to do to have the best time possible and to be able to like absorb and, get a taste of the culture as much as they can while they're there.
Yeah, it's so interesting that you say that. One, it's amazing that you've done all that solo travel, and I'd love to get into that as a female solo travel and your experience. But, when you talk about the country, it's kind of a running thread here on a lot of our episodes about how safe things really are when you're there in country and how hospitable things can be. Of course, as you stay within your parameters, planning things out, knowing what you're going to do, leaving some things open for that sake of adventure or just spontaneity is always great. But I've always found anyone that I've ever met of Colombian descent or really all over South America has just been so hospitable, welcoming, warm, and it's been incredible. And, the difference between what you're going to get in the news and what you're going to see on the ground, there's always a disconnect. And what you see on the ground is always good people who are just very welcoming. So again, you know, a lot of people that we've been able to talk to in the past on other episodes, they always mention the same thing, that there is that disconnect as well. So it's good to hear the same thing happens in Colombia.
Definitely, if we went back to the 90s to the 80s, it would be a different story. There's no denying that. But nowadays, it's definitely a very safe country. And like you said, it's very hospitable. If Colombians love anything, it's having people over. So anytime we can host, we're happy to do it.
And salsa, right?
Yes, definitely. We do love our dancing.
No, definitely. That's that's something we can get into a little bit later. There's so many aspects of the culture that I really enjoyed when I was down there. But let's get back to the Caribbean coast a bit more. So Cartagena, the old fort and that city really blew me away from a historical standpoint. All of the gold from South America that the Spanish took back to Spain left from Cartagena. So that just kind of gives you an idea of the kind of, stealing, let's be honest, as that's what it was, that was coming out of South America. Francis Drake and numerous privateers from other continental European navies repeatedly attacked and sunk various Spanish galleons in the Caribbean Sea, and obviously on the way to the Atlantic, and not even accounting for hurricanes and other storms. So with that long soliloquy there, I guess the Cartagena is very well known. It's becoming a very hot destination. And your hometown of Barranquilla, unfortunately, didn't have a time to explore. Tell us a little bit more about that. It's a little bit of a, I would say, more unknown destination. And just tell us what travelers should look for there, and what you think has some particular significance for people that maybe aren't as familiar with Colombia.
Okay, so yes, I'm originally from Barranquilla. I'm fortunate enough that I have my father is from Bogota, my mother is from Monteria, so I have a little bit of like every region in me, so to speak. But so Barranquilla is an hour away from Cartagena. It's a really fast and nice, actually. It's a very scenic drive. Cartagena is like the crown jewel of tourism in Colombia. That's what drives people to get there. And I mean, rightly so. It's a beautiful, beautiful city. It has amazing people. It has amazing restaurants. It's just like the streets are stunning. The culture, it's everywhere. I love it. Actually, even if you're from Barranquilla and you're an hour away, you go to Cartagena at least 5 times a year because it's just so nice to go to such a beautiful city. So even the locals, we love to go to Cartagena. We can't get enough of it. So Barranquilla is, I mean, it's kind of a mix because it's not necessarily like a tourist town unless you do a good amount of research on Colombia. But if you do, you'll find that it has a lot of good things that you should visit if you really want to get like a taste of the culture in Colombia. So Barranquilla has a carnival around, the same dates that all carnivals in the world are, before starting Lent. It's not just a great carnival. I think it may have changed recently, but as far as I know, it's the longest carnival in the world because we start, I think, mid-December. So basically what we'll do is every Friday there will be a different celebration with a different theme, like a different typical dance, a different typical costume. So that's pre-carnival, and that starts like months in advance of the actual, 5 days of Carnival. And I haven't been lucky enough to go to any other carnivals. I haven't been to New Orleans or to Brazil or to Italy, but what I can say about my specific experience is that the city goes all in. Every Friday when there's one of these parades or one of these parties, the entire city stops. Like banks will shut down in the middle of the day, offices will close, and you just know. When I worked as a lawyer in Colombia and we knew it was coming up, my boss would be like, is it going to be delayed? And I'm like, yes, for sure. It's definitely going to be delayed because no one will work Friday afternoon when you have a parade coming up. And it's taking place at 8 p.m. and you have to get ready. mentally and physically, you have to get ready. And then when Carnival starts, nobody will be found doing anything other than partying on the streets with people, going to the parades, going to the parties. The first 3 days, it's just a nonstop celebration. I remember when I was a senior in high school, I started. I was in the parade Saturday, and I started at 6:30 a.m. and then I got back home. I want to say 3 p.m. the next day.
Oh wow,
that's stamina.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like, I think that's what's very admirable about people in my hometown. We will make it so that we can last as long as possible at the party. It's not about drinking a lot and going, making your body go through all of this pain because you're out there. No, it's going to be a very enjoyable experience, and it's going to go on as long as possible. So we're very good at balancing what we're doing with the eating and the drinking and the dancing. We just hit the right spot so that we can stay there the longest.
That's definitely a theme that I've noticed in Latin America specifically. Is I said, so when's last call? Because in the States you're used to, depending on your state, 1-2 a.m. So you kind of have to pack in your drinking or the consumption of whatever in a fairly finite amount of time. But a lot of these parties, especially in South America, they'll go till 6, 7, 8 in the morning, and I just think to myself, wow. If you can pace yourself, that's really the way to do it. So clearly, you've got it down.
I think you hit the spot right there, because I don't think the concept of last call is necessarily a thing in Colombia. I mean, of course, clubs have to close down, but there isn't, like, if a place shuts down at 2 a.m., then there's another one that opens at 2:15. So then you can go to the place at 2:15, and then you can, walk home with your friends at 6 a.m. So everyone's used to it. And we also, if we can start, which I have to say, this has maybe been the most difficult part of my transition to the US, because if we can start early, like the earlier we can get things going, the better. So if you show up to a party at 4 p.m., everyone's already in the mood, and the music is on, and everyone's already having a good time in a party setting. Whereas here in New York, like last night I went out and I had to wait until midnight, which was suffering. It was very hard for me, because I'm like, I should have started at 4 p.m. My body is telling me that this is wrong, but I have to go with it because this is where I live now. But yeah, if we can start early, then it's better.
I think there's definitely a cultural difference between the two. We have more of a sprint approach up here, where especially, 1, 2 o'clock, Winfield was saying about last call, but also, Carolina, you probably see now in New York, it's 4 a.m. some places, and then there's the after hours, but it's always more of that sprint. It's less of a consistent, let's just celebrate and enjoy and dance, more of, well, let's get it in before the bar closes type of thing. So big difference there. I wanted to ask you about your Carnival there. I don't know if you know the answer to this, but is there a particular reason why you guys start so much earlier than everyone else, or why do you have the longest Carnival celebration in that region?
I think it's because we like to party.
That's a great answer.
I have to be honest, like, I love my hometown because it's Shakira's hometown, and Sofia Vergara is also from there. So it's just really beautiful people that are having a really good time. Like, anytime I bring anyone back to Barranquilla, they're like, wait, can you just run it by me again? Why did you leave? And I'm like, I don't know how to explain it. Because everyone's just really happy and having a good time all the time. Like, everyone goes back home to have lunch. Everyone is like walking distance from where they work. Everyone goes to the gym every day. It's like really beautiful people having a really good life quality. So I think to that they just have to add the partying, which is, makes it even a better life. So I think that's it. I think it started as a short, the regular sized carnival or whatever, and the regular length carnival, I'm sorry. And then they were like, oh, but how about we add this party for cumbia, and we do this special day for garabato, and then we do this other day for mapale. Like, because every Friday is a different day for, a different kind of dance, a different kind of tradition. So I think it's also good that we get to focus on a specific part of our culture for our weekend leading up to the carnival.
Smile on your face, good celebration, and enjoying life.
Exactly. That's what they're trying to do. Just enjoy life as much as possible. And also everyone like has a really long life. Like people in Barranquilla go well into their 90s. So it's a good long life. I guess it says a lot about the culture. You need
It's a
parties
proof of
if you want to
concept.
live long. Yeah.
Now that's definitely something that I echo on Chris's side. I guess it's a bit of a stereotype too, because there's a lot. I mean, in South America, each country is so different, but there's a lot of. I mean, there's still a lot of hard work. There's a lot of things that we just think about it as being a nonstop party, but it definitely the contrast is great, and it almost reminds me more of kind of a European lifestyle, where instead of living to work, you work to live.
Exactly. And we also take siestas every day. That's also very European of us.
Indeed, that sounds great. Why can't
Yeah.
we incorporate that into American working culture?
I mean, I think it's the best way to do it.
That's interesting because you moved up to New York, where it's nonstop work there, and then we go well into the hours of the night to have that party time. So that must have been a transition for you.
It's taken some adjustment. The first 6 months here, it was very hard for me to understand. But now I think I hit a good spot where I get to go out late in the night with my American friends, but I also have a good group of Colombian friends, and when I go out with them, we go out at 11 a.m. and then we start by going to brunch, and then we come back home at 3 a.m. as God intended.
That's great. And going back to Barranquilla and some of the surrounding environs there. One area that I was really sad that I wasn't able to visit last time I was in that area was Santa Marta and Parque Nacional, the biosphere there. There's really an amazing amount of biodiversity, cloud forest, beautiful terraced, well, not really rice fields, but just terraces that are kind of naturally built into nature. Can you tell listeners a bit more about some of the natural trails and opportunities to experience nature in the region?
So, in the Caribbean coast of Colombia, you have the southernmost city is Cartagena, where people usually get to because it's a 4-hour trip from New York. And then an hour away is Barranquilla, and then an hour and a half away, that's Santa Marta. So in Santa Marta, you have Tayrona and Ciudad Perdida, so Lost City. So Tayrona is an indigenous word from the Tayronas tribe, which is one of the many indigenous tribes in Colombia that we have, and it's a desert, and it's also like a jungle. It's also a mountain that's right next to the sea. It's a really stunning scenery because you have so many different things that maybe you wouldn't have thought that would go side by side, but the biodiversity there is insane. And as a matter of fact, it makes it so that like the living conditions, like if you want to be really healthy, like if you want your body to have the best oxygen possible, you move to Santa Marta, because something about the breeze coming from the ocean and the breeze coming from the mountains makes it perfect for your heart and lungs or something like that. Like all of my friends' parents have retired there. So Tayrona National Park is like you can go camping there, you can just spend a day. And what I really find impressive about them is that it's in perfect condition. Whenever you visit, there's no trash. All the signs are perfect. The guides are fantastic. You can go snorkeling, you can go scuba diving, you can go skiing, and everyone is taking such great care of it, not just because it's their income and their livelihood, but because there's so much respect towards the land and what it stands for, that every time I did this right after I passed the bar. I took a few friends with me to Tayrona, and when you show up at 8 a.m., they sit you down, and for 45 minutes to an hour they let you know why it's so important And they tell you that you should care for it as much as they care for it, even if you're not from there, even if it's your first time or your last time. You should cherish this land because we only have one earth and all that stuff. And that's something that they've had going for it's very popular. It's a very popular take these days, but it's something that they've had for the longest time because their connection, like this tribe's connection to the land, is very, very important. So I think it's a really great thing. Whenever you visit there, like, you really do understand the connection that we should have to planet Earth.
No, definitely, and I think that's a really key point. Is it's kind of a cliche phrase now, but leave nothing but footprints.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
it's encouraging to hear that's that really is still the mantra of not only indigenous peoples but people that come there to visit. It's really being proactive about sustainability, but also having environmental stewardship when you go to a place that you're not familiar with.
And people really do it. Like, I saw everyone. It was like 45 of us who were just spending the day, and everyone was picking up everything that, as they ate it, because you got chips and soda and whatever. Everyone was picking it up. Everyone was being just so responsible and so caring. So it was touching to see it.
Sometimes you forget that, when you're living in an urban environment or going about your daily life as well, to be able to get out into nature and truly reconnect with the scenery around you. I know that, at least for me, I'm an avid hiker, so I love going to places like this. Leave no trace is just a common mantra for people on the trails, but there are certain places around that I've been, at least, that just take your breath away, and you truly understand how small you are in this big cog of nature that we all live in 24/7, and we forget about when we're going about our 9 to 5 life or trying to make it through the rat race of the day or whatever. So it's amazing to have an experience like that. It sounds like a pretty incredible place.
Yes, it's amazing.
I wanted to ask you, if possible, because I've talked to so many people recently about Colombia, and people, whether they're from there or they just recently visited, they all talk about the Rainbow River. So I wanted to see if you've ever been to the area or have seen it yourself.
Unfortunately, I haven't.
Not
So,
yet. Not yet.
and here's why. So, my father was in the army. So, and he's like still very connected, and it's very much a part of my family's, like, I don't say like culture, but like we're overprotective. That's what it is. So of course he was a little bit more connected to what happened in Colombia in the 80s and the 90s. So because of that, as things have gotten safer, they've been more open to us traveling, getting to know our country way more. Because back, like a few years ago when I still lived there, he was still a little bit hesitant to let me go to these, remote locations, because it is a trek to get there. Like, you have to fly to a city, and then from there you have to take like one of those very, very tiny planes that only fits about 3 people. So I haven't been able to get there because he was still like a little afraid, but I'm sure that next time that I'm able to spend a good amount of time in Colombia, I'll visit. But it is beautiful. A few friends that have been have just absolutely loved it.
That's the same thing I hear as well. I mean, I haven't heard a bad complaint about it, and it's definitely worth the journey to get there, for
Yeah.
sure. For sure.
And in that same vein, in terms of places that are a little bit less traversed, I know that Santa Marta is not too far from the Venezuelan border, and of course, we all know what's going on in Venezuela at the moment. Obviously, multiple tragedies, but in the past, when Venezuela, I guess, was in a different state historically and whatnot, was it pretty easy to go across the border and to go there for the day, or to experience some of the nature there? Because there's tremendous not only waterfalls, of course, Angel Falls, way in the southeast of the country, but there's just a lot of nature right there as well.
So the Venezuelan culture and the Colombian, like Caribbean Colombian culture specifically, so people from the coast, it's very similar. like our accents are practically the same. The way we dance is very similar. Um, the like maybe this is a weird thing to say if you've never been to Colombia, but facial features are like vary from region to region in Colombia. So by looking at someone's face, you'll be able to tell where they're from, which is, I think, it's one of my favorite things from the country. Everyone looks so very different. And even like the facial features of people from the Colombian coast to the people of Venezuela are very similar, which means that we all come from, the same ancestors. So before, when things weren't, as sad as they are now, it was very common for people to just travel by day. Even there's places in Colombia where you can just walk into Venezuela. You just have to cross a bridge. So,
Wow.
yes, unfortunately, that is no longer the reality, um, because of what's going on over there. But it was very common for people to just take a day trip. And I remember my grandmother would be there all the time. She just loved visiting her friends, and it was just very common, like going to Florida from New York, just smooth traveling, and everyone was doing it. It's very sad that we can't do that anymore.
Yeah, that is a shame, and there's obviously been a lot of diaspora and inflows of Venezuelans into Colombia recently for obvious reasons. So the fact that you are so connected culturally and really brothers and sisters, it's kind of an accident of history that a border was placed there. But I guess that's the nature of how the continent was divided.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
And then moving up, still in the Caribbean region, but a place that I will admit that I did not know about, that's also part of Colombia, but is an island in the middle of the Caribbean, San Andres. Tell listeners a little bit about that. It's something that is really popular for Brazilians and Colombians, and that's how I found out about it through my wife, actually, who's Brazilian. She said that this is a place where a lot of actors and famous people like to go. So, is it kind of the Ibiza of Colombia, or what's it like there?
I mean, I wouldn't call it the Ibiza of Colombia because it's not like that big. It's not known for like its outrageous parties or whatever, but it is. I've been to San Andres a few times, and it is the most beautiful beaches that I've ever been to, and that includes Thailand. Um, it's it's actually, so it was part of a dispute, if I recall correctly, because Nicaragua said that because the island was closer to them, it was supposed to be part of Nicaragua as opposed to being part of Colombia. But I think that was solved in the 90s. And the government has certainly made efforts to be closer and pay more attention to the needs of the people in San Andres. So people from San Andres come from many, many different backgrounds. Actually, a lot of people speak Papiamento, and they're also doing their best to like keep their culture safe from people who come visit and just take it like as a tourist destination. It's a relatively small island, like you can go around it in one afternoon. There's places where you can hike. There's places where you can just dive into the ocean. There's wreckages that you can explore. Like you just start walking on the beach and make it all the way into the wreckage, which was so much fun. And the food is fantastic. Like the seafood there is like nothing I've ever had anywhere else. And there aren't that many hotels, which I think is um it's weird because it's such a big tourist destination. But there's lots of people, like you said, that have like summer houses there and apartments there that they just can go in and out easily. There's also a lot of Airbnb, and it's a lot of fun. It's like a very fun little island. I liked it a lot. It's very beautiful. And then from there you can go to Providencia, which is a smaller island, and it's not as populated as San Andres. Like it doesn't have the infrastructure. It's way more like rustic, which if that's what you're looking for, like that sort of adventure, it's perfect.
Nice. And is that just a ferry ride away, I'm assuming?
I think you can go by boat, or you can also go by plane, like one of
Okay.
those small planes. If
Yeah.
I may be mistaken about that, but yeah, it's very, very close.
No, it's interesting that you mentioned the territorial dispute with Nicaragua. because apparently Simon Bolivar discovered the island in the early 1800s and claimed it as part of the new Gran Colombia,
Hmm.
which was what's kind of a South American empire in its own right, as it seceded from Spain. But it's interesting that you also mentioned they speak Papiamento, because that is a dialect, or well, it's a language in its own right. It's a mishmash of languages, but that's spoken in Aruba and some of the ABC islands, even off the coast, as you mentioned, of other Central American countries. So it's really interesting how there's not only a distinct culture there, but it's a distinct heritage that is quite different from the mainland.
Yes, yes. They have their own. I mean, that's something that you can say from pretty much any region in Colombia. Like, for example, the culture in Chocó is very different from the culture in Bogota. The culture in Cali is very different from the culture in Barranquilla. The culture in Medellin is very different from the culture in Monteria. Like, every region has their very own distinct way of living, their very own distinct like traditions, and it's like I said at the beginning, it's just very diverse. It's very cool to get to witness all these different ways of living in one country.
Yeah, exactly, and that's what's so interesting, is that there's so many nuances and different facets depending on where you go and which region you're in. Even as you mentioned earlier, the accents can be different also. And so going back a bit more to some of the cultural aspects, you mentioned dancing. That's definitely a distinctly uh, Colombian in terms of style and in terms of not only the music as well. Give us some insights into not only the music scene, but really how strong Colombian culture is, because it's now exported around the world.
Okay, so right next to the dancing, I think I would say is the food. Our culture is just goes around what we eat. It's a very very important part. It's how we bond with people. um, so I like I said, I think that's one of the things I miss the most from there as well. Because the quality of the ingredients is just so rich. And like even if you're just frying an egg and having it with bread, it's just so delicious. Like the flavor of everything that you eat in Colombia is so intense. And it's not intense because I get asked this often, like, do we do things that are spicy, that are hot? And I don't think that's necessarily the case. We do things that are just very flavorful. So in every region of the country that you'll have like these very different dishes that kind of explain the way of living and what sort of like things that you should be getting ready for. So for example, the typical dish in Bogota is ajiaco, which is like this very like I want to say thick chicken soup. And they also have this other thing that's called changua, which is another soup that you eat for breakfast, which is kind of rare. It has an egg in it with milk and like celery. It's very weird. My father loves it. We have to make it for him for his birthday. We don't eat it because it's just like weird, but like it tells you a lot about Cachaco, which is like Bogota, Cachaco culture, because it's so cold and the days are shorter. Like the sun sets a little bit earlier than other parts of the country, and it's probably going to rain, so you need to brace yourself for like a very cold day. Whereas in the coast, everything's fried and it's just very greasy, and you get a lot of carbs because the days, like you're going to sweat a lot through the day, so you get to burn that off. So I think it's very cool how the food reflects the kind of like your life conditions depending on where you are in the country. So I really like that a lot. And of course, coffee, which I say w- it's a very different experience from here in the US. Like here in the US, coffee is fuel, right? Like you get coffee and it you have because you have to work long hours and you have to wake up and that sort of thing. When I first moved here and I was studying at Fordham, I would have coffee in the afternoon like I would in Colombia, and then I'd be up until 3 a.m. just with palpitations because it was insane to me. I'm sorry, that was my alarm for the call with you earlier. And then in Colombia, you don't do that. In Colombia, coffee is like a way to like meet up with people and just have a nice chat. So it's softer. Like it's not as caffeinated as it is here, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. In fact, Winfield was saying before that there's some stereotypes when it comes to not just Colombia, but Latin America or South America. And one would be the party aspect of it. But then also, for me at least, it's definitely the food, having delicious food. And then the appreciation of coffee is a lot more in line with more of a European culture where there's a celebration and event behind it, rather than, like you were saying, just fuel. I need it on the go. Let's have our coffee on the way to work, on the subway, if you're in the city, or in the car ride on the way to work. So I've noticed that. I just got back from Peru just a couple of weeks ago as well. And of course, the coffee varies from place to place, but it was definitely more of an appreciation of the whole process and not just to get it down quickly and go.
Yeah, like when we have dinner, we have coffee. Like you have coffee with dinner. You have coffee in the middle of the afternoon. Like you'll have 4 or 5 cups a day, and it's not to wake up. It's because it's yummy, and you get to have a little chat, and you have a little cookie, and just to take a break as opposed to get a jump start, I guess, is the main difference.
No, exactly. And going back to what you were saying earlier about the dichotomies in terms of regions with food in Bogota, I remember exactly what you were saying. Walking into a bakery as soon as I got off the plane and speaking in broken Spanish, and I got my point across, which was great. But having that soup that you mentioned, the ají soup, with some delicious homemade bread, and but then taking that and contrasting it with the Caribbean cuisine. Remember going to a beach called Playa Blanca Baru, which is a beautiful beach outside of Cartagena. Highly recommend that to anybody visiting the region. But just having this beautiful Caribbean rock lobster with fresh garlic and just seasoned, it was just grilled, and totally different style of presentation, everything. And it's the same country. It's really, but there's, as you said, there's such a difference, not only climatically, but also what the ingredients are.
Which makes sense, right? Because Bogota, I believe it's right around 8,600 feet above sea level, right? So it's not obviously going to be more of that tropical feeling. I mean, obviously you want that soup for the colder weather and the climate there. So it's really interesting for sure.
Yes, Bogota is a trek. It's way, way, way up there. Breathing is hard. Like it rains every single day. But it's a very interesting city. I lived there for 13 years.
Now that's well, you definitely have quite a handle for it then, in terms of if you were there that long.
Yeah. I think of all the cities in Colombia, Bogota is the one where you would benefit the most from having someone who's a local. Because it's tricky to get around, and public transportation is definitely not the strong suit of Colombia. We need a lot of work in that. But Bogota definitely has, like, it's such a big city, and it has so many interesting places that people don't really get to visit because you don't know how to get there unless you're with someone who's from there. So we have this like little church, and it's called Monserrate, that it's on the highest point of the city, and it's right next to, they open an amazing restaurant right next to it, and it has the best food in the city. And you can go up by ferry, or you can go up, you can walk it up, which is something that a lot of really strong faith Catholics do. Like every Sunday, they'll just walk all the way up, which I think is quite the feat. Like breathing in Bogota is hard. When you go up there, like you actually get dizzy, but it's really beautiful. Like the view from the city is stunning. And like the downtown area, El Centro, it has like, the government, all the government buildings, and it has Universidad de los Andes. And it's really, really beautiful to see like the old architecture next to the new architecture. And then, of course, you have Andres, which is like this club that I think is known everywhere in Latin America. It's this really, really, really big place. I think I think it can fit like 6,000 people or something. Like it's insane how big it is. And it's this restaurant, and I guess the way it works explains a lot about Colombian partying culture. It's a restaurant that's open from, I want to say 10:30 a.m. every day, and it shuts down at 5 a.m. the next day. So you can show up to have lunch, this really amazing lunch, because the food is incredible. And it has like typical dishes from almost all the country. And it has also cocktails that are made with Colombian typical fruits. And you can only get those there. It's not like a martini that you can get anywhere. No, if you get a mandarino, which is this drink with tangerines, I think that is the closest thing to a mandarina. So it's this thing with a tangerine. You can only get it there, and it's like a family thing because there's children and there's grandparents and everything. But then as the day goes on, it becomes more of a partying situation, and the decoration of the place, the guy who owns it did everything by hand. It's just like forged steel and carved wood.
Wow.
And every different table has a name. Like there's a lamp that's shaped, if you look it up, you'll see it. There's a lamp that's shaped like a heart, and all the tables have like a name. And it's so cool. Like just walking into the place, because there's all the decoration is like jumping on top of you. It's so, so, so cool. I really recommend that you look that up. It's called Andres Carne de Res. And it's probably one of the best places I've ever been to. Like one of the funnest places, definitely.
Well, I definitely wish that we had known each other before I went to Bogota because
You didn't go? Wow. See, that's why you need a local there. And
exactly.
And when people visit, like you tell the staff, like, hey, this guy's from abroad. They'll give you a sash and you wear it with a crown all night. And then
Oh my gosh. Public
So
shaming.
the staff is not just like, they're bringing your stuff. Like they're part of like the celebration, and they're all like artists. So you walk around and they'll take you out dancing because you're a guest. I think what it says is guest of honor. So they'll twirl you around because you're a guest of honor. They'll dance for you. They'll sing for you. It's such an amazing experience to bring people from abroad to Andres. It's amazing.
Yeah, that sounds fantastic. And going back to your point about Monserrate, I had an adventure of my own trying to get up there. So I started walking up the stairs along the side of I guess it's a mountain. I don't remember the name of it off the top of my head. And getting to a road that was going east-west. And I knew that there was a bus that went along it. And I was trying to find the station where the funicular started. Because I didn't have a very good map.
Funicular. Yeah.
Sorry?
No. I said ferry and it's funicular. That thing. Sorry.
Right. No, but I was trying to find it, but my map wasn't really to scale, and I didn't have service on my phone. So I hopped on this bus, which was a very local bus, and I got on there and figured out how to. I think I didn't have a small enough pesos for a change for the bus fare. Anyway, I figured that out somehow, and I sat down next to this lady and started. I think I said "tu hablas inglés." started trying to point at where I was trying to go, and I said, like station, because I was at that point I was learning Portuguese, so everything that came out was basically Portuñol, if not Portuguese. So she was very confused because it was a mixture of English, Spanish, and Portuguese. But anyway, she said, it's on this bus, like just follow me and I'll show you where to get off. So I finally got there. It was 2 or 3 stops away. It wasn't that far. But once you get up there, it's absolutely stunning because it's an overlook of the entire city, and you can just see for miles and miles. And it was a really, really clear day. But that church up there, as you said, it's very much of a pilgrimage destination for devout Catholics and also people from other religions. It's beautiful. It's really, really loving. There's some nice stalls up there, and also I recall seeing the restaurant you mentioned, but I did not dine there.
Yes, it's really beautiful. It's really, really beautiful.
And also going back to the homemade cocktails, one thing that it took me a while to find, but I was told that I had to try it, was chicha.
Okay.
Can you explain what it is? Because I don't think my description would do it justice.
So there's many variations of chicha, and many like depending where you are, chicha will be made of something different. Right now, off the top of my head, I can't recall what chicha is made of in Bogota, but it's like fermented fruit. But it's very, I mean, I don't drink chicha because it just looks weird to me. But it'll make you tipsy really, really fast. Did it do that to you?
Sort of. I mean, I was I was expecting it to be a cross between Everclear and some kind of absinthe. But as you said, it had a much more of a milky consistency.
Yeah.
So if anybody's had pulque in Mexico, it kind of reminded me a bit of that. Just a thicker consistency. But yes, I mean, it definitely is strong. I'm not a huge aguardiente fan. I know that's probably considered the national liquor, maybe rum, depending on where you are.
You should have said that before we started. Very offensive.
We should have done a shot on air.
Yeah, no, yeah, aguardiente is the national drink. I mean,
okay,
it's what people mostly drink in Bogota, like where it's colder, but definitely I would say because rum, yeah, of course everyone drinks rum, and in the coast it's mostly whiskey, but I do think that aguardiente is the national drink.
Right. No, and that's what I heard by and large as well. But I can't remember where I got that lead about chicha, because I had to go to this specific neighborhood and a specific bar in Bogota just to find it, because it was extremely difficult to find. Apparently it's much easier to find in some of the provinces, but in the city it's very hard to find.
Yeah, it's very hard to find, especially in Bogota. Like in other cities, there's basically like little carts going around giving people, like selling chicha. Like that's very common in Colombia, in the coast especially. You'll just be like sitting down on your terrace, and there will be people walking down the street with like plates of, typical candy or chicha and that sort of thing, and you just buy it from them. So it's very easy to get. Like, and we don't have ice cream trucks. We have typical candy trucks, people walking around. It's really beautiful. They're called palenqueras. I'm sure you saw them in Cartagena.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yes. No, definitely.
Like that, but with a little cart and the ladle for the chicha.
But also the helados, very nice.
Yes. Oh, nice. I like that.
And we can't forget arepas. That's it's hard to know who invented it first. There's a lot of controversy about that, but some of the best arepas I've ever had were in Cartagena.
Oh, yeah, but you had arepa huevo.
Sí.
Yes. Good. That's the way to do it. Yeah, for sure. Like with everything, there's so many variations of arepas. So if you go to Medellin, you'll get a very different arepa than the one you got in the coast, because we fry them, like deep fry arepa, and then we put the eggs inside and sometimes beef, and it's so good. I would love to have one right now. I can make them. That is the one thing I can do, arepa huevo. But if you go to Medellin, it's just like pan fried. It's just on top, and it's a little bit burnt on the sides, but it's different, but they're all so good. Arepas are fantastic, and they're so easy to make. Actually, I've found a few places here in New York that sell the flour for arepas.
I was going to say, I'm sure you can probably find somewhere there in the city, in New York City, where they do sell it. But for all us non-foodies out there, I don't know if I'd include myself in that category. Can you describe what an arepa is, Carolina?
Basically, you take flour, you add water, you add salt, a little bit of butter if you want. You mix it around like to make like a dough, and then you make a little ball. You make it flat with your hands and just put it on the pan until it's a little brown on the sides, and then that's it. And you can eat it with pretty much anything, and it'll make your life better.
So that's interesting. So it's not corn flour; it's regular flour.
No. I'm sorry, corn flour. Yes.
Okay. All right. So it's kind of a stone ground griddle cake, kind of a pancake shape without the
Mhm.
sugar.
Yeah, exactly. But
Mhm.
if you want, you can add sugar and licorice, and that will also give you a very nice treat.
We're having this conversation right around 12:30 in the afternoon, so it's lunchtime, and
Yeah.
I know what I'm doing as soon as we get off of this recording here. But so, Carolina, in the beginning, you did mention that you've traveled quite a bit as a solo traveler, and I wanted to come back to that if possible, because on Locales Unknown, we not only like to talk about various locations and what to do there, but we try to reinforce the fact that, like we said in the beginning, the world is a pretty safe place. It's okay to go out there and adventure. Usually you'll find you're in good hands, hospitable people wherever you land. Can you tell us a little bit about your experience on the road as a solo female? I think there's a lot of stigma behind that for some of us in the US, particularly females, about the world being safe.
Um, Wait, you mean here in Colombia or like other places where I've been?
Just in general. So you mentioned that you went to Southeast Asia, right? You've been to
Yeah.
Thailand. Did you go solo on that trip?
I went with 2 other girlfriends,
Okay.
which
And
is, I guess, a
oh,
little
sorry,
bit,
go
I
ahead.
would say, a little bit more complicated than going by yourself. Um, so I will say that but I did that with 2 friends, but most of the other countries that have been in Latin America, I did by myself. I
Okay.
think that when you're traveling as a woman by yourself, the most important thing is to be just very aware of where you're spending your nights. I don't think it's, like I said at the beginning, any place can be dangerous, but I think that as long as you have a good place to go back to, and by that I mean people who will notice that you didn't make it back to your hotel, uh, also somewhere that your relatives or the people that are on the lookout for you can reach out to and know if you showed up, if you didn't show up. I think that's something that's very, very important when you're traveling by yourself, to have like one point of contact, one location that you should always be going back to. um, because that makes the whole experience much more enjoyable if you know that there's at least someone who would know if you went missing. Like, because that's the biggest risk, I think, if you're a woman traveling. It's not, getting mugged or losing something. That can happen to anyone. But if you're a woman, let's not kid ourselves. The risk is that you go missing. So if you have someone that can find out, that can alert your friends or your loved ones, or that your friends and loved ones can reach out to if they can find you, I think that is like a very good thing to have. Just a good touch base. That's what I think. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a great tip. I mean, that even goes beyond just being a solo female traveler. Just being able to tie into any type of community where your face is recognized and people know whether or not, your presence is missing in a certain setting, then you're usually, being safe. So that's good.
Yeah.
Definitely, even a sort of invisible support network. If it's people that you were just on a tour with, or in a hostel, or that you made eye contact with in passing during the day, as you said, there's definitely a traveler community, which it's important to have that continuity, even if you're on the road by yourself. So, and just going back to Colombia specifically. What would you say for people in terms of prices down there, in terms of budgets? I'm assuming there's something for everybody, but can people get by on a relatively modest budget for extended period of time?
Oh, definitely. Especially with the exchange rate right now. I think it's 4-1. Um, in any case, Colombia has a very affordable, um, like you can have a very affordable lifestyle. Like, things are very, very cheap in Colombia in general. Of course, there's incredible things that can be incredibly luxurious, but you can also get by in a really comfortable way, spending very little money. So it's incredibly affordable. Actually, I'm planning for next year for my birthday. I'm thinking I'm gonna bring like my 10 closest friends for like a 5-day party there, and I'm gonna do everything I can to make it super affordable so that they all can go, And I think it's very doable. Like there's something for, every budget.
That's fantastic. Very, very generous of you, and but also shows that it can be done, and also there are a lot of really interesting for people that might be interested in longer term stays or having Colombia as a second home. Real estate is in certain areas and metropolitan areas, but also land outside of cities in urban areas can be quite affordable and a very prudent investment for the future.
Oh, yes, definitely. Definitely. And Colombia as a retirement location is just perfect.
Can foreigners own land outright, or does it need to be through a partnership with a local?
No, you can own land.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. Now that's something that I've actually been looking at recently in a few locales. Dare I say it? But no, it's definitely as you said, there's something for everybody, not only on the budget side, but also in terms of lifestyle and in terms of residential accommodation. And final question. Obviously, we're hopefully towards the end of the coronavirus pandemic. What currently in Colombia, are there major restrictions? Are people starting to come out of lockdown and are businesses starting to reopen, or is it very dependent on municipalities?
So the coronavirus experience in Colombia was, I have to say, very different from the one here in the US. So my parents' birthdays are the first week of March, the 2nd and the 5th, which is almost always the week of Carnival, which is very convenient for me. So I always try to travel down there and spend that week with them, and they'll just do one celebration. So that's what I did last year, and I was supposed to be there for 2 weeks, and I was supposed to head back here the 13th, March 13th. But then my parents were like, why don't we give this coronavirus thing a couple of days, see what happens? And then what happened was that the country shut down. Like they closed the borders. You couldn't even drive from one city to the other. You couldn't go out. Like I spent 5 months inside my parents' house. Because if you were going out, you had to have like a legitimate reason to go out. You either were going to go grocery shopping and it was decided by the last number of your ID. And then you needed to do it like relatively close to your house. Like there were a bunch of things that were in place for people to just stay at home and make it as safe as possible. So it was very restrictive at the beginning. And so the first peak happened way later, around September, August. But now the situation, I think, is very much in control. Like in my hometown, I don't think there's been a COVID death in about a month or so. People are very much pro getting vaccinated, which is also a big difference. Like everybody wants to get it as soon as possible, because everyone's very much looking forward to life being normal again. And I think that is definitely starting to happen.
No, definitely. Well, that's great news to hear, and I know that as you said, some of those spikes also coincided with some social unrest in Bogota and other places regarding, I guess, not only lockdown measures, but also some social welfare issues. But I think those have ebbed now in the meantime as well, right?
Actually, no. Some of the peaks coincided with a couple of bad decisions made by, I think they opened up a few like big stores with big sales, and people went a little crazy with that. But there weren't as many peaks due to the social unrest. People who were protesting had their mask on. It was outside, so it wasn't really that connected.
Mhm. And then Winfield, just for reference, I looked recently, and I think it was as the beginning of October that Colombia no longer requires a negative COVID test for international travelers to come in. So it looks like things are getting better. And I wanted to ask you, Winfield, because I think you'd have a little bit more experience with this. If you recall, I know that as Americans, we usually do shorter term travel, but do you know how long the visa was when entering Colombia?
Yes, it's 90 days, the best of my recollection. And I think you can extend that up to 180 if you file the necessary paperwork. But go ahead.
You don't need a visa. You just need a passport. Like you got a permit to stay in the country, but you don't need a visa as an American to go into the country.
Okay.
Correct.
So no
Yes,
application.
landing permission. Right.
Yeah.
I should have clarified that, but no, you're exactly right.
Yeah. Cool.
But also, 90 days in the country is not enough to see the whole country. As I
No.
think this episode is summed up, that you definitely need a lot more time, just because it is so vast, and some regions are really hard to access, as you mentioned earlier, with the Rainbow River, and a lot of areas in the mountains that's just that are rural. And I know infrastructure is definitely catching up. It's becoming rapidly industrialized in some areas, but there's still some very remote areas that are hard to reach.
Well, the 90 days wouldn't even cover the majority of the Carnival there. So we would definitely need some longer time.
We can't forget that.
I mean, you have to go for the entire carnival, definitely.
Yeah.
It sounds like a rite of passage.
Of course.
Well, I think it's time now to move into our signature lightning round, where we're going to ask you 10 questions, Carolina. And are you ready to get going?
Sure.
All right. So the first question is, one wish. What would it be?
Un arepa huevo.
I'm sorry. What was that?
Arepa huevo.
Repo Huevo. Okay. All right. Well, that coincides right with lunch hour. So that's a good one.
That's a wish that can come true. I think that's the first one so far.
Which country would you like to visit the most, and why?
Greece. I have a thing with mythology, and I have to go see everything.
Beautiful, beautiful country. I've only been to Athens, but highly recommend it. What's one place or thing in Colombia that you still really want to do?
I want to go to Guajira, to the northernmost part of the country, which is also the northernmost part of South America. It's called Punta Gallinas. It's really beautiful.
Interesting. So that must be really close to the equator, or does the equator go under that?
Under that.
Under. Okay. All right. And it's true. It's because you think the geography of Colombia, it does go really far north, as you mentioned earlier in the episode. Cartagena is down here, but it goes diagonally kind of northeast, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And what's the strangest thing you've ever eaten?
Pig brain.
Okay. I remember I had pig's blood in Hong Kong, but not the brain. So that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
How was it?
Spongy. That was actually here in New York.
Okay.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, we went from arepa huevos to pig brain. That's quite a contrast.
Yeah. I have to say, it's when I traveled to Southeast Asia, I was there for a month, and I gained 25 pounds. Because I had to try absolutely everything, and I did.
I definitely know the feeling. I've lived in Cambodia for 3 months, and it was just every day it was something new. Roadside stall, I had to try it.
Yeah.
What's your favorite thing about Colombia?
The dancing.
Great answer. And what's the must-see attraction in Colombia if you could just choose one thing?
I guess Castillo San Felipe in Cartagena, the castle, definitely. It's like when you go inside and you get to explore it, that's really, really cool.
No, you're exactly right. And the way it just but not only protects the old town, but the views you have out over the water are absolutely stunning.
It's amazing, yeah.
And what is one tip that you have for travelers?
Have a paper map.
That's a good one, especially when your phone. If something happens with your phone, you have a backup.
Yeah, all of Southeast Asia I did with a paper map.
It's not something you think about nowadays, for sure. I know also, you mentioned the phone. So Google Maps, you can do the offline maps as well, maps.me as well, but having that backup as well, just in case anything happens. Yeah,
exactly.
Smart.
What motivates you to travel?
I think the food. Two things. So the food and visiting friends. I think. Yeah, those would be the two things. Seeing friends.
Both very worthwhile endeavors.
Yeah.
And which mode or modes of transportation do you recommend within Colombia?
It has to be plane. There's no way around it. I wish there was, because actually I'm a little scared of flying. I've had really bad experiences. But
Right.
you can't really, like, you can drive from a place to another. We have no train. But driving, for example, from Barranquilla to Bogota, which are two like main cities, is like 14 hours. It's insane. Whereas it's 1 hour by plane. So it doesn't really make any sense.
So
Yeah.
once you land in the various places, then would you recommend renting a car, or is there public transportation within the regions?
You can always take a bus. What's tricky is figuring out the schedule. Because it's still, I mean, the last time I had to plan this sort of thing, because I just go with my parents' car. It's they don't really have everything set up online so that you can know when the departures are and when you're getting there, that sort of thing. So it's more like you show up at the bus station and then see which one is leaving the soonest, which can be very convenient if that's the sort of traveling that you want to do. If you want to do something that's a little bit more structured, then definitely rent a car. You can do that too.
Yeah, it's so important to remember that the efficiency that you're going to experience in one country might not translate into another. So you can't go with certain expectations that everything's going to run in a certain way that you're used to. So that's always good to know.
Exactly.
And on the flight side, I know Avianca is obviously the flag carrier, but Colombia is getting some budget airlines as well, right? Isn't Viva, and there's one other that the name's escaping me, that's entering the market, kind of displacing the monopoly that Avianca's had for such a long time.
Yeah, I'm not sure they're doing the best job at that. Everything I've seen on Twitter is just a mess. People missing their own weddings, just being stuck
Oh,
in the
wow.
yeah, it's being stuck at the airport for days and days and days. So I think for now, sticking to Avianca is maybe the better option, unfortunately, because it is quite pricey.
Right. And also with all the service disruptions with the pandemic, hopefully
Exactly.
some of those other options can come back online as the situation improves and people start traveling again.
Yeah, exactly.
And the final question, if there was one moment that you could relive in your life, what would it be?
Wow. I guess I'd have to say my parents' vow renewal. That was very cool. Yeah, yeah. My parents got married in '86, but it was more of like a rushed wedding, like not rushed, like flash. They were just like, do you want to do it? And yeah, let's do it. So they got married and just invited a few friends. It was in front of like a notary. Like it was a very casual thing. So they never did like the big wedding with the white dress and all that stuff. And I have two siblings. We spent years and years and years telling them that we wanted them to have like a wedding at a church and have the party and all of that. And when the three of us moved out, that became like my mom's project to plan her own wedding. And she invited everyone that had been invited to the first wedding who was still around. And then the three of us were part of the wedding. And it was really, really beautiful. It was a great day.
That's beautiful.
Yeah, they're super cute.
That's a lovely way to end on a high note. And that's touching and inspiring because you go through so many years of life together as a couple, and you obviously grow, change, and evolve. But to have a vow renewal truly takes you back to your origin story of when it all started.
She was like they were both nervous. She was crying on the way to the church, and I'm like, "You saw him this morning." He was an hour ago.
You would think it'd be the other way around. Do I want to see him again?
No, she was like giddy with excitement. She cried. He cried. They were like cheering as it was. I mean, it was actually like being there for the first time they did it. They had just as much excitement, if not more. It was really beautiful.
Well, that's true love right there. If
Yeah.
there's ever a way to sum it up.
Yeah.
And thank you for sharing that with us and all of your insights today about beautiful Colombia. It is truly a place that everyone should visit. And we can't stress enough how grateful we are for not only your insights about the Caribbean coast, but everything that this beautiful place has to offer. Thank you again, Carolina.
No, thank you for having me. This was so much fun.
Thank you so much. It's a repa time, I guess. So
Time for huevos.
take care. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Okay,
Yes,
you
thank
too.
you. Yeah, thanks. Bye-bye.
Bye.
So without further ado, we're back with another fun fact today. And this time we're going to talk about the liquid rainbow. So Colombia has a river called Cano Cristales, whereby the colors that come off of it are reminiscent of a rainbow. So if you ever find a way to get there or check it out, by all means, this is one of those places off the beaten track that you'll really enjoy.
Well, there you have it. Another fun fact about a locale unknown. Thank you, Winfield, and thank you, everyone, for tuning in to another episode with us. We started this podcast in the hopes of shedding some light on the various destinations out there in the world that might be more off the beaten path. And we're hoping we're accomplishing that goal by bringing on our friends and our various guests to give us some insight about their various locations and what to do in the areas. So if you like what you hear, make sure that you follow us on all the podcast platforms as well as the social media platforms out there, because we're back every single week. I wouldn't want you to miss what we have coming up. We already have a couple great guests in the pipeline that we are very excited for, and I think you guys will be too. So we are on Apple Podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Google Podcasts, we're on all the other platforms. Locales Unknown. Go ahead and hit the search. When you find us, be sure to hit the follow or subscribe button. And if you're an Apple Podcast user out there, please let us know how we're doing. We're building this for you guys. So scroll down to the bottom of Apple Podcasts and go ahead and leave us a review and maybe some comments there. Also on social media, we are very active on Instagram, on TikTok, on Facebook. We have our YouTube channel, so feel free to go ahead and drop us a line. We have our website, localesunknown.com. You can find all of our episodes there. And if you want to reach us directly, we have our email address, contact@localesunknown.com. Maybe you have some suggestions for us. Maybe you want to introduce us to someone that you think might be a great fit for the show. We are all ears. So once again, thank you so much for listening. We'll be right back here next week with another great episode somewhere out there in the world. Stay tuned.